Before we begin, we have a favor to ask. If you like this podcast, please help us spread the word about the show. Go to Apple Podcasts and rate and review the show. Another way is to tell a fellow art teacher. Either way, it helps others find the show. The Blocks, Paper, Scissors podcast has a lot of information regarding teaching art, not just for tab teachers, but for anyone who is looking to further their understanding of children in a choice-based classroom. This show is about finding new ways to engage children and help them find their voice through visual arts.
Hello, everyone. My name is Clark Freilich.
And I'm Clyde Gaw.
And this is the Blocks, Paper, Scissors podcast. In today's episode, Clyde and I will be discussing teaching for artistic behavior and how it supports trauma-informed curriculum. So for people who may or may not know what we mean by trauma-informed, when students come to us in a variety of different places, when we talk about trauma, there's all kinds of trauma. There's emotional, and I think I read somewhere where it was like 60% of adults say that they experienced some form of trauma in childhood. Maybe it was an overbearing parent, they beat them, sexually abused them, poverty, just anything that disrupts the normal biological development of children could be considered trauma.
If you inflict pain, psycho-emotional, physical, sexual, if you inflict pain on somebody or they experience pain from an event and it disrupts their normal patterns, their natural patterns of being, of consciousness, of intellectual development, this event that, or a series of events that caused the trauma, they can have an effect on children's learning, and of course, or any human being's learning, or their capacity to exist and to think naturally, and to think and be. It affects their being. It can debilitate. And here I'm trying to provide a clinical definition of trauma, but
we're not doctors. We're not psychologists.
We see children with these symptoms, with the affect from.
And it's typically what we see are the behaviors that these kids exhibit in our classroom that we can associate with trauma. When I was talking to you earlier, or mentioned it's different for elementary, middle school, and high school. And unless students in the elementary or the younger children, unless they have the skills necessary to work with, it's only going to manifest itself worse as they get older.
Yep.
It
will be self-perpetuating.
Yes.
It can be.
And I think I teach elementary, and I'm focusing myself on becoming better at dealing with kids who are experiencing some form of trauma. Now, they may or may not have trauma, but I think looking at a lot of the literature and how to deal with these kids, all children can benefit from approaching and noticing and recognizing those things. When you see a child who's outbursts and just angry, and how to work with that child, there's no magic bullet. But I think, especially with the younger kids, they need to understand that they have to feel safe in the school. And I'm not just safe from being beat up or bullied like that.
Yeah.
They actually need to feel that the teachers, the school family, cares about them.
Right.
And, they may not get that at home. They might be locked in a room with an iPad, and some parents call that parenting.
Yeah.
And so they're only getting input from one source, from the iPad, and the type of information they're getting isn't necessarily the best. For some reason, parents, not all parents, because there's kids who come to school who are ready, feel that the adults in school care about them.
Safety is that's one of the domains that is critical in creating a culture of care for children who have experienced trauma. And I posted on my blog a link to the work of Roger D. Fallett, PhD, and Maxine Harris, PhD, who I found their work on the National Institute of Health database.
Mm-hmm.
And safety, a culture of where safety is ensured for the physical and emotional safety of the individual is evident, is one of their first domains for creating an environment or a culture of care for trauma-affected children.
Mm-hmm.
So, or trauma-affected individuals. I mean, obviously, that's critical not just for the TAB classroom, but for the school in general, obviously. And I think our schools the schools we work in are, that's what we strive for. Is not always the case.
I think it's what we strive for, but I think, honestly, school corporations could do a lot more in not only they need to address this issue and use professional development to train teachers, to help teachers become more aware. I mean, we can do all kinds of language arts or math or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at a school or a school corporation and just step back and look at professional development, what do we see as important? So they're all focusing on math, and now we're doing language arts.
Yeah.
Where's the professional development to develop culture in a school or to help children feel safe in a school? Is our focus on math and language arts and those, or should we be focusing on children? Because if kids aren't in the right place, the math and the language arts won't happen.
Right.
And they're putting the cart before the horse.
Right.
And I think many schools are just now realizing that, well, maybe we need to look at this social emotional thing. Because social emotional learning is really important.
Exactly. Yes.
And teachers need to be trained. Teachers are not trained in recognizing things and working with kids to boost their social emotional learning. They're not.
They'll shut down.
Yeah. They put academics before it. I mean, I could go in a whole thing about play.
Yeah.
And how important play is in that type of thing, and how play has, since it's been pulled out of kindergarten, we see more and more problems with kids later on because they don't know how to interact with each other. They don't know how to work together. They don't know how to solve problems. Schools
are paradoxes, and it's a paradox. You're charged with raising test scores, and your schools here in Indiana, we get a grade, maintaining the school's grade, and you get that through test scores.
No, the schools are put in a bad spot.
Yeah, and then how do you humanize the curriculum? Is the state mandates that schools use a behaviorist paradigm to structure curriculum. So that means that this experience is going to be done to you if you're a little kid. You don't have much say in what's going to happen to you. Here's the curriculum, and guess what? Here's the activities you're going to do. This is the scope and sequence, The scope and sequence is all about information processing and selected response questions, short answer writing activities. The scope and sequence, you don't have any, the child has very little control. And play? Forget about it.
Forget about it.
So,
But play is, I mean, beyond recess.
yes.
Recess is so important. I mean, young kids need to move, especially in elementary. Now, as they get older in middle school and high school,
They still need to play.
They still need to move.
Yeah.
They can play basketball or do whatever it is they need to do, but they do more organized sports.
Yeah. The high schoolers are, trust me on this, they are adults they are adults in the making, but they're still little kids with big bodies, and with lots of, and I have to speak generally speaking, but, we have a lot of, on a case-by-case basis, everyone's unique and individual, but they're only 36 months removed from elementary, from 5th grade, as they come into 9th grade. So we're still dealing with, they're still adolescents. And there won't be adults till, they're in their 20s.
Oh, yeah.
My daughter, she's 23 years old, and she has a college degree, and she's got a working with a prestigious nonprofit, but she's still in her heart, and there's that part of her that is still a developing young human being, and she's not quite an adult yet. She still has insecurities, and I can see that she won't be a full-fledged adult for a long time. So and that situation varies, I believe, with all children as they go into adulthood. So thinking about young kids as we see them, in my situation now that, after 29 years teaching elementary, and now I've been teaching, this is my fifth year, going into my 6th year teaching high school. There are tremendous benefits for children who are affected by trauma of being in a classroom like a TAB classroom, where it's a safe space, and the expectation that we provide children is that, hey, we're going to trust you, and we're going to give you some leeway here, but I'm going to trust you to act on your own creative impulse, and there's a sense of responsibility that you're going to have to put forth.
Do you think you talked about expectations, and we have expectations in our classrooms. They're more individual. We do have high expectations, but the expectations are fluid. And in a typical classroom, a lot of times the expectations are sit down, be quiet, listen to the teacher.
Right.
Which, in an elementary classroom, I think those expectations are unreal, especially for 5 and 6-year-olds.
Yes, we were talking about that earlier.
As expectations go in a TAB classroom, we're expecting, we have our 3-sentence curriculum. What do artists do? The child is the artist, and the room is the studio.
Yeah.
Using those as expectations, thinking about being a teacher in a TAB classroom. What is it that, as an artist, we have those expectations as far as developing ideas, and we give that power to the student? They're the ones who are doing what they're interested in.
Yeah, they get to organize the experience.
Right.
That's huge. That's empowerment. Back to, we're trusting them to create a artistic, creative situation for themselves, and they're being empowered to do so. And in that, sense, back to what do artists do, and it's, drawing upon one's imagination and one's internal worlds to generate an artistic idea. That all seamlessly works together in a TAB classroom. There's so much benefit.
Even when it comes to using things like scissors, Sharpie markers, tools in the classroom, hot glue guns.
Yep.
When you tell a kid, I trust you, their mind is blown.
Yeah.
They're like, really?
Yep,
Really?
This is a safe place, we trust you.
We trust you. My mom would never let me do that. I'm sorry.
You get that response. My mom would not. My mom.
Oh yeah, I'm not.
Oh,
kids. I'm not allowed to use. I'm not allowed to use Sharpies. I think in my head, okay, what did this child draw on in the first place? But if you're going to give a child tools and materials, you have to show them how to properly use them. Are they going to make mistakes? Yeah. But they're also going to learn from those mistakes. Taking things away from kids because they made a mistake isn't helping them.
That's regressive.
It doesn't, if we took things away from every time some child misused it,
oh my gosh,
there'd be nothing left.
That's if you take, that's mindset, you take it away because they failed or they didn't use the tool properly. That's, another way of behavior modification, that punishing the child.
Closing the studio
and
because they didn't clean it up is not helping the students become better cleaners.
Yes.
You need to reteach them.
Right.
Some kids it takes 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times.
Right.
Other kids, they get it right away. Those expectations, and having those expectations as a teacher, you can't have the same expectations if you're running a TAB classroom as you did with a completely teacher-led classroom.
Right.
It's not going to be the same.
And particularly when you're dealing with children whose lives have been disrupted through trauma, or they have other behavioral symptoms that are difficult to deal with. And so that's the reality that teachers live in, especially teachers who work in public education. You take on all comers and all kinds of children.
Doesn't matter who they are, we still have to teach them. We can't filter them out.
We deal sometimes with the mess and the mayhem that we have to get in touch with our own feelings about accepting and being introspective as to why the children need more practice refining their functioning.
Yeah.
And it's only going to get better through practice.
Yeah, you mentioned those things that they're triggers. And I think teachers, especially new teachers to TAB, have to sit down with themselves, honestly think about those triggers that drive them crazy.
Yeah.
And it could be, and a lot of it's around cleanup, and a lot of it's this or that. And I think new TAB teachers need to write those triggers down seriously, so that when they see them, that they have, once they recognize that that's one of my triggers, you can deal with it. When that thing happens, you have a plan that you've rehearsed or practiced that you just kick in. I hear teachers, oh, it was a bad day, this happened and this happened. Well, those days are going to happen.
Yeah.
And you have to prepare. Since those are your triggers, are you going to really give up teaching for artistic behavior because it was chaos? Well, that's part of learning. It's part of the mayhem. You, as a teacher, have to make conscious effort to change your paradigm when teaching for artistic behavior. And when you can do that, it's only going to help kids who are trauma affected.
The benefit is that it will help them. The benefit of TAB is that you will get responses for children who will benefit from in an open setting where they experience empowerment and self-expression, where they experience choice, and where they might be able to collaborate with a fellow classmate, which is also beneficial to learning. I'm thinking the beneficial outcomes from TAB are immense, and I have just all kinds of anecdotal evidence has been piling up lately. I look at the surveys I give my kids at end of the semester. They're very positive from the kids.
Well, and that as well as many of our listeners, whenever there's a child who might be having problems in a regular gen ed classroom, we typically don't see those problems in a TAB classroom because for one thing or another, because of the freedom, because of the choice, because of the trusting, because of being able to work with things, being able to choose what they want to work on, they feel more empowered. Those behaviors aren't as nearly as bad. And I'm not saying that they're not there, because sometimes it just happens. But when our resource people give us sheets to fill out on kids, and that does the behavior happen here? And it's like, I honestly don't see the behavior
we don't
that
see
you're
it.
looking at.
We rarely have problems because children are very much engaged in their inner worlds and expressing those inner worlds.
And they see the TAB classroom as a very safe space.
Yes.
For them to be. And so they want to be there. And so, we keep talking about, kids vote with their feet. They're going to the high school art room during their prep time. Okay, well, we have 50 kids that want to be here.
Yeah. That's why the art room is a busy place, because kids are drawn to it, because they know that they can be their natural selves there. Thinking about the other domains of the culture of trauma-informed care that we provide, there is choices in there. There's freedom to collaborate, and there's empowerment in a TAB art room. In a fully functioning TAB art room, you're going to see safety, trustworthiness, choice, collaboration, empowerment. Those are all important aspects of a culture of care. That's why we see kids coming to the art room in numbers that we do.
Yeah. And we didn't set out, I don't think TAB set out to be a solution to trauma-informed. No. It just naturally supports the things that are missing from the other part of the school.
Kathy,
I'm not saying all schools are that way, but you hear a lot of schools that are based around a behaviorism model.
Yeah.
Where kids have to
jump through hoops,
toe the line.
Compliance,
level zero tolerance.
Incentivize.
Right. Extrinsic motivators.
External rigor.
What is rigor, by the way?
We're going to make it harder.
Sounds good. Rigor.
Kathy and Diane and Pauline and John, they're very much into creative experience, meeting the needs of unique learners and meeting their creative needs when they began to design and refine TAB curriculum structures and pedagogy. But it's all about creativity, and that's what you and I are all about too. The side benefit is that creative experience is like the very best kind of human experience you can have. And it's a super phenomenon, a super experience.
It's such a natural experience to create. You just pick up a crayon and scribble on something, and to the outside world, we don't recognize what that scribble is, but to the 1-year-old or the 2-year-old, it's everything in that experience of not just tactile and visual, but emotional. And yet you hear stories of, don't draw on the wall.
Well, human beings are born with hands. And they're pretty doggone. They're pretty doggone good, nice organs. If you're fortunate human being to be born with hands and an imagination and two eyes and tactile functions. Tab was designed to optimize creative growth, creative learning experience. But the side benefit is when you have the best kinds of creative learning experiences, they ameliorate other kinds of physiological and emotional and mental issues. Because when you're involved in a creative growth experience, it's generating all kinds of wonderful, I don't want to get too in-depth in neurological analysis, but there's shots of serotonin, dopamine.
Oh yeah, the chemical balance of the brain.
The brain is growing immensely through creative growth.
Yeah,
adrenaline. You're getting adrenaline shots.
You just made me think of Yoyoi Kusama and how she lives in a mental institution, and they take her to her studio every day to create, and she goes back.
I don't know her full story.
Oh,
you shared.
You should.
That's amazing.
There's a Netflix documentary, I think, or Hulu, one of them. You should watch it.
Well, I'm thinking also about the story of Judith Scott. That that's really that will just break your heart if you don't know the story of Judith Scott. I mean, there's another poor human being. Judith was traumatized throughout most of her adult life and her childhood, and it was the arts that restored her.
We could go on and on with art therapy, but neither of you or I are art therapists.
No. We're specialists in creativity.
We play them on TV or on the radio.
We know how to create a environment for creative experience.
Yeah, a good, safe, creative environment that's good for kids.
Absolutely. It's a difficult subject, talking about trauma-informed cultures and trauma-informed curriculum.
And I think
or curricula.
Isn't our the Institute, TAB Institute, creating safe spaces?
Yes.
So there's going to be a good quality thread.
It's going to be in depth. We're going to get into it.
Have some good keynote speakers and have a great professional development week in Boston.
We talked about trauma-informed culture, the TAB room being a safe space for children who have experienced trauma. But I think the curriculum itself is trauma-informed, unlike most other curriculums. The curriculum itself, by its very nature being personally creative, is it's a big deal. If you have a TAB program in your school, support it. Can I read a letter from one of my former students?
Sure.
I'm just going to read part of it, and I'm not going to reveal his name, but just read part of the letter. He says, I am in Mr. Gau's art class. He has inspired me to do more art pieces that I didn't even think I can do. He said, make some art that describes who you basically are. So I made an anime character. I made this art piece that describes what I've been through. I've been through a rough path my whole life. It started when I was a baby. It gets worse every year of my life. I can't control it. This art piece is dark because of what I've been through with my life. It is also dark because I feel like I am trapped in a dark box. It's like a black hole. I can never be free from the dark. The dark always finds a way back in my life. The bandages on my arm in this picture are about the violence that I've been through. When I was a little kid, my dad hit me all over my body. The hoodie I wear here is because I always wear a black hoodie when I was younger. I wore the hoodie because I didn't want anyone to notice who I am. Also because all the bruises on my body, and I didn't want anyone to see them. I don't want anyone to know my pain. So I made this art piece because the violence and the dark of my life. And this picture I saw online seems the best way to describe what I've been through. I'm a much better person now. I also made this art because everyone has dark in their life. This art class is an amazing experience. Mr. Gaw got stuff out of me that I didn't know that I have in me. Now I love to draw. It is a different way to get stuff out that needs to be out of my mind. My teacher always told me what I draw is incredible. I think it is good also because I draw what I've been through, and I want to get my story out on paper, no matter if it's in drawings or whatever. So thank you, Mr. Gaw. Thank you. You made this school year better for me. I'm happy to report the young man's doing pretty good now, although it's for a lot of other reasons also. A lot of support from his mother.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a courageous young man. You know, we have a lot of stories like that. You know, our TAB classroom is a destination place, not just within the school, but word gets out.
Yeah, they vote with their feet. They know it's a safe place. They want to be there.
Yep.
Do you have any thoughts to wrap up with?
At the TAB Institute, we're going to get deep into this topic, and of course, anytime we have some other opportunities. I know we have TAB Stock is coming up pretty soon in spring.
Yeah,
or actually early
June
summer.
23rd, June 24th, right?
That'll be fun. Of course, we can always have discussions on TAB forums.
If you have something you want us to talk about, feel free to drop us an email. I think you can reach us through the Blocks, Paper, Scissors podcast. Send us an email. Always, if you have time, feel free to rate us on iTunes. It helps other people find the podcast and also helps the podcast. It's always good hearing from our listeners.
It's always good.
Always good. I need to apologize since it's been 3 months since our last podcast.
Well, you've been down a little bit. You've been sick.
Yeah, I've had this stupid respiratory thing for almost 3 months. So, and then Christmas, and glad we got one out in November, but we tried to do it in December, but that wasn't working. And then January, I was coughing all over the place. So
we're here now. We're gonna do some more. We need to also get some special guests and talk about some subjects that other folks want to hear about.
we always looking for good subject matter. NAEA is coming up.
That's right.
And I haven't decided if I'm going yet. It's spring break, so I have the time off. I could drive up there, find a place to stay.
I know a place you
I
can
need
stay.
to crash. Maybe I'll just sleep in my car.
Yeah, I know.
In a van, down by the river.
I'm gonna be down there with Melissa Perty and Ian Sands.
Are you
And,
presenting with them? You doing a round table discussion?
It's a forum. Yeah,
a forum.
It's a forum with Jean Barnett, Pam
Emmerich.
Yep, and also
It's like the high school. It's like superheroes. Yeah. Man, there's so much star power on that forum.
we have a pretty good topic. You know, are we making artists? We've got artists all over the place.
Of course, we're making artists. Who the hell would think we're not making artists?
I mean, we got kids attending art schools. We have kids who are professional artists as adults.
Yeah. What
Kids
I mean,
who
what
are
do you
doing-
expect?
Kids who are in museum education. Kids who are architects. Kids
And
who are doing
kids who are
professional artists.
Yeah,
And
kids who are just making their own art.
I just had a kid, Robbie. He just had an exhibition at Indianapolis Museum of Art. Robbie Yaw, and he's a graffiti artist. And Nick, he was at the Indianapolis Museum of Art. He's a professional graffiti artist also.
Oh well, so we'll need to wrap up. We've
Okay.
been in here an hour.
Oh my goodness, we get going.
We get going. We get off topic, and
We could
just
turn this into tap stock.
just keep rolling around. So, thanks everyone for
I'm gonna bring
listening.
my tent.
We'll talk to you later.
See you later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Now let's get started by letting me give you a little bit of a scenario of what my life is all about. First off, I am 35 years old, I am divorced, and I live in a van down by the river.
Are you gonna leave? Are you telling lies? You about have to be. All your life you done what you're told, and now you know it's time.